Hello and welcome to week 4 in research methods, and we are exploring chapter 5, hypothesis development. Now I know that we're on a different pace in regard to the actual construction of your proposal and ultimately your study, and that's okay. This content's going to get ahead of that, and then as I get around to grading those individual assignments, building on each other, we'll be returning to this material. So, hypotheses have to do with the educated guess that you're going to make as to what is going to be the results of your study. If you're looking at two variables, you predict what is going to be the relationship. Now that prediction is not a gut reaction. It's not a guess. Really, when I say educated guess, it's informed by the research that you've done on the original article that you are replicating. When you're doing original work, you're looking at the preponderance of the evidence so far collected in the field, contributing to what is the most likely outcome between these two variables. Where do I think things are going to go? Now, we talked about defining our measures. So I want to place this into the sequence of how we go from the research question to the hypotheses. So you start off with a research question, which is largely in English. And you'll get where it's largely in easy to understand English. So let's just say you're looking at the effect of fried foods on mental health or wellness. Let's call that, the effect of fried foods, of eating fried foods in your diet on the wellness. So that's your research question. What is the effect of having a fast food diet on wellness? Then we go into operational definitions. What do we mean by a diet of fast food, and what do we mean by wellness? So let's just say it's the number of times per week a meal you are eating contains fried food. So you're going to measure that over 4 weeks. You're going to take an average of those 4 weeks, and you're going to end up with a score for every person that says how much fried foods do they make. And you define that as the average number of meals per week that include fried foods. Maybe the percentage of meals, because the actual number might vary. So the percentage of meals in a given week that include fried foods. What's the measure of wellness? So let's say you go online and you capture somewhere there's a test out there that's called the wellness survey, or there's tests for all kinds of things. And what you want to do is find ones that are pretty valid. When you're doing research for publication, you have to make sure that it's valid, or you have to build in methods within your study to show that it's valid. But nonetheless, for this, you're going to find a measure. You're going to somehow to measure wellness. Let's say it's I'm going to make this up, the Kavanaugh Wellness Scale. Let's say you go out there and you find this thing online called the Kavanaugh Wellness Scale, and it gives you, maybe a couple subtests, whatever, and then an overall score on wellness. So you see how we've moved from this English statement of what is the relationship between fried foods in your diet and wellness. We get into the operational definitions as fried foods is the percentage of meals per week that include fried foods, and overall scores in the Kavanaugh Wellness Survey, whatever I said. When you talk about your hypotheses, you are going to talk about in terms of your measures, not your research questions. So you're going to refer, you might say, let's say you believe, based on the preponderance of the evidence, that individuals who have a higher percentage of fried foods in their weekly diets will have lower scores on their wellness. So you will write that out as individual. Your hypotheses, your alternate hypothesis will be individuals with higher percentages of fried foods in their meals will score lower on the Kavanaugh wellness instrument. Then, notice how that's phrased in terms of your operational definitions. Then you have a null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is not that people will score higher if they have higher. That's not it. The null hypothesis is always there's nothing going on. Now, you would phrase that almost exactly like the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis might read, there is no relationship between the percentage of fried foods per week and individual scores on the Kavanaugh Wellness Survey instrument, whatever. I keep on mixing up those words, but you keep that consistent. I can't. But you have that first one that says there is a relationship, then you have the null hypothesis where there is no relationship. If you want to consider that fried foods may actually increase wellness or it might decrease wellness, you can change the alternative hypothesis to there will be a relationship between the percentage of fried foods per week and results on the Kavanaugh Wellness Instrument. That would be entailing what we would call a two-tailed test, because I'm taking into consideration that my dependent variable, the percentage of fried foods, could either increase or decrease wellness as measured by the Kavanaugh Wellness Inventory. There's the third word I've used for that. So if I want a two-tailed test and I want to open up this to, it could go either way, then I create that sort of generic alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis will remain the same. The null hypothesis essentially says there is no relationship. Positive correlation, negative correlation, doesn't matter. I'm saying there's no relationship. That would stay the same. It's kind of up to you. And if you remember from statistics, if we go with a one-tailed test versus a two-tailed test, and we are setting our criteria for significance, 0.05, 0.01, keep in mind that when we go to a two-tailed, we are taking that percentage and we're dividing it on both ends. So if I'm going to set the percentage of likelihood that this occurred by chance, the criteria for significance at 0.05 on a two-tailed test, that means I have 0.025 on one side and 0.025. Those would add up to 0.5, 0.05, 5%. That's actually 2.5% on each end. It actually increases it moves the bar higher, makes it more difficult to get significant results. So sometimes people will, or maybe you're not concerned. Another reason why we might go with the one-tailed test is not only because it's slightly easier to reach significance, but we might not be concerned about fried foods increase in our wellness. We just might not be interested in it. And so those are decisions. In fact, when you're reading research, you kind of want to look at that. Where are they making this decision in terms of their variable? Are they going, both ways? It could increase, decrease, or are they just looking at one? Is there a good reason why they're just looking at one? Those kinds of things when we're making these decisions for that. Now, the discussion, however, a little bit of a departure from that. All of this, I want you to reflect upon the reading of your original article, your source article that you're using for this study. I want you to think about it and the challenges that you experienced reading that paper, keeping in mind that the audience for most of these articles is not you. It's other people familiar in that field, other people with advanced degrees who understand the lingo associated with that particular field. And then in the quiz, what we're looking at, the first question would be, why do we need, and I said it in this video, why do we need to understand everything that's happened before regarding our study? Why is it important to have a literature review? Yours is very small. It's really comprised of just the original article, maybe some related articles, maybe articles related to the instruments, like the Kavanaugh Wellness Inventory, that you would include in that. It's not a broad spectrum review of the literature. However, why do we need, in the research you read, why would they need to give all that background? Why is it important to have that? And then the second question actually relates to that one-tailed, two-tailed, and I gave you an example in here, coming up with an example of a two-tailed versus one-tailed choice. Same experiment. How could you have a one-tailed, two-tailed? Do not use my example. Please use another example. If I see anybody talking about fried food, and I know one of you is doing an assignment on your study is actually looking at fried food. I was just putting that all together earlier today, so that was stuck in my head. So when you answer that question, don't use fried food. Do something else. Bake up something. Maybe look at your study and consider, where could I go with my hypotheses and keep it one-tailed? Where could I go with my hypotheses and keep it two-tailed? And through that process, it'll help you make the decision as to what you're really going to do. So that's it for this week. Some stuff I am a little behind in grading the proposals. Don't hang in there. I'm going to get to those very soon. I will get to those proposals, and then you can move on to the next chapters. And actually, I think most of our work's going to happen on this first paper. I reviewed them this morning, and there's some work to do on most of them. Some formatting sort of things. I know you're expecting that, and to kind of get some of those down so those pieces are consistent from this point on, and we don't have to talk about APA format or anything like that much anymore at all. I'll be sending those corrections. We work those until that's perfect, and then from that point on, we're really looking a lot at content, because you're going to take the lessons about APA format from this initial revision of the proposal, and you're going to apply that to the rest of the paper. So that's it for this week. It's a fun time. It's really getting into the work that you've done. I've actually, just to put it on my head, I knew what everybody was doing, but I made a list of everybody's research topics, what they're looking at, and what an interesting collection we have. It's really cool. I'll probably take some version of that and share it with everybody in these classes, the face-to-face class and the online class. You can see what everybody's doing, and it's interesting. It's interesting stuff. This, of course, precludes you from participating in any of these studies. I would really like to be able to have each one of you participate in each other's studies, but you're on the inside. You sort of have a knowledge of what's going on. And with some of these studies, we don't necessarily want to share exactly what we think is going to happen with anybody that's going to be part of that study. So I'll be sending that out, and like I said, I'll be getting around to those proposals here pretty soon. And so have a great week. Stay healthy. It's nice outside today, but it is February. And have a great week, and I will see you in the discussions.